I have accumulated 100 operating hours on my Kubota B2301 compact tractor. Coming up, my impressions after 100 hours, good, bad, and indifferent. Now, I've never owned a tractor before, so keep in mind this is coming from the perspective of a first-time tractor owner slash operator. As far as initial quality, it's solid. Now I realize this is not a passenger car where you've got 100 parts just on the door alone that can come loose or anything, but I don't have any rattles or anything coming loose. There are a couple minor things I noticed though. The bucket is a little bit crooked. When I lower it all the way to the ground, it twists a little, and then lift it up, it twists a little. And this might be completely normal. There might be some people out there saying, every tractor I've ever had has done that, and it was 10 times worse. So again, I don't think it's a big deal. Just it is noticeable though. That's the only thing mechanically anyway. I do have a concern about the paint though. I know that Kubota isn't exactly famous for their paint. As a matter of fact, they might even be infamous, in a bad way for their paint. I'm not shy about taking my tractor into tight spaces and places where it could really hack up a paint job. I don't have any deep scratches or paint flaking off or anything like that, so it's held up in that regard. But it does seem like it might be showing signs of exposure to the elements. And this thing's kept inside most of the time. It'll be out all day while I'm working with it, but at night it's back in the barn. Sometimes it's there for 4 or 5 days straight. And I can tell, especially on the hood, that it's starting to feel a little rough, like the sun's starting to get to it. So probably I need to put on some UV protectant wax on there. I probably should have done it already. Now, I don't expect it to look like a show car, but I also don't want it to look like this in a couple of years either. So yeah, upon delivery, everything was operational. Everything worked the way it was supposed to. I haven't had to have any warranty work done. And I've put it through its paces too. I've hauled everything imaginable, towed several things, including a 28-foot travel trailer around the property, drilled many a hole with the auger, cleared fields with the rotary cutter, graded the driveway several times. And it's a long driveway too. It's almost a quarter-mile long. On several occasions used it as a crane as well, and quite literally moved tons of dirt. There was one instance where it was a little difficult to get started though, but then again it was negative 14 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 25 Celsius. Despite holding the glow plugs down a lot longer than usual, it would start and chug and die and start and chug and die, and eventually did stay running, and possibly I should have had some anti-gel in the fuel. But overall, it's been very reliable. It hasn't let me down. Almost immediately after taking delivery of the tractor, I was hoping that I didn't make a mistake and wish I had gotten the B2301, which is essentially the same tractor, just with a more powerful engine by 3 horsepower. However, after 100 hours of operation, there's only one time when I felt I could have used a little more power. I was using the rotary cutter and going through some really tall, really thick brush. Not what's showing on screen here. This stuff here is no problem at all for the tractor. But there was some other stuff that bogged the tractor down a little bit. I just had to slow down and it was fine. But other than that, power's not my problem. I run out of traction before I run out of power. I do have ballast in the tires, which does help a lot, and I normally have the back blade on them, which adds a couple hundred extra pounds. But even in four-wheel drive and with the diff lock on, the engine will break the tires loose before it bogs down. And that's really only when using the front-end loader. For everything else, box grading, mowing, dragging stuff around, traction's not a problem, and power's not a problem. I am 5 foot 16 inches tall. From an outside observer, I might look a little too big for the tractor, but I actually feel quite comfortable on it. I don't feel like I'm cramped or that I could use more room. Then again, I have been this size almost my entire life, so maybe I'm just used to using things that were designed for more average-sized people. All the controls are within easy reach, and I haven't had any issues with inadvertently moving a control. I don't use the tilt wheel function as I don't really need it. I can reach the whole steering wheel comfortably with it all the way forward. Just like everybody else probably, I use the steering wheel to pull myself up onto the tractor. However, on several occasions I've accidentally stepped on the release lever when getting on, and therefore the wheel pivots backwards and I lose my balance temporarily. So now I'm definitely more cognizant of where I put my foot when getting on. And speaking of steering, the power steering on this is fabulous. It's absolutely effortless. All you need is just a real light touch with the palm of the hand. You can even steer it with one or two fingers in the spokes, actually. Kubota uses this treadle pedal design to operate the hydrostatic transmission to go forward and backward. I've seen plenty of times in these comparison videos, the John Deere versus Kubota, that people advocate for the treadle pedal setup. They say that it's more intuitive, and the John Deere setup, which is a side-by-side pedal, not as good because you can get confused and hit the wrong pedal. Well, that doesn't really hold too much weight with me, because even with using a treadle pedal, I've pushed the wrong pedal and gone the wrong way. When that does happen, usually it's when I'm turned around looking backwards and I just get temporarily disoriented, but not always. And if I had a choice on my Kubota between the two, I think I'd take the dual pedal setup instead of the treadle pedal setup. This tractor has 3 gears and I use all 3 of them regularly. Whatever task I happen to be doing, one of those 3 gears seems to fit the bill well. Now, I understand some of the tractors, maybe only the subcompact tractors that have only 2 gears, and I really couldn't imagine having only 2 gears. And I'm certain that there's those out there that have tractors with 6 gears or 12 gears that would say, I couldn't imagine having a tractor with only 3 gears. To those people I would say, touche. You have to be careful though with the hydrostatic transmission. When you let off the pedal, it brakes automatically. So when traveling at top speed in high gear, and you let off the pedal too fast, it'll decelerate quite abruptly, and if you're not ready for it, it could actually throw you forward into the steering wheel. That part is not in the operator's manual. Something I discovered too with this pedal is that when it's very cold, this pedal does not return to neutral as fast as it does when it's warm. It's a little sluggish. So when I use the tractor the most in the summer, I developed a very good feel for how fast the tractor would slow to a stop when I released the pedal. So then when working in the winter, it caught me off guard a couple times where it didn't slow as fast as I thought it would, and I came close to hitting a few things. And in those instances, my thinking wasn't quick enough to just think to use the brake on the left-hand side. I'm not used to using it. I never really need to, unless I'm working on a slope or I don't want to fall into a ditch that I just dug. 99% of the time, I only use it for a parking brake. And speaking of parking brakes, it would be nice if there was some sort of indicator that the parking brake is on. Several times I've been driving around wondering why the thing seems so sluggish, not realizing I forgot to release the brake. So I'll probably fabricate some sort of an indicator here in the near future. And while I'm on the subject of brakes, here's a feature I don't get. The brakes can decouple so that the left and right brakes can be used independently. My understanding is that that is to allow for a tighter turning radius. But the turning radius is only as tight as the pivot of the front wheels will allow. So in this demo, with no brake, I've got the steering wheel at full lock, and this is the tightest turning radius I can get right here. So here, using just the right brake, the wheel at full lock again, I'm getting the same turning radius. All I'm doing here is just tearing up my lawn, actually. Possibly I'm misunderstanding how this is supposed to work, or maybe it's just for use under different conditions like not grass, like maybe it's muddy and the front tires don't get any gription. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody can help me out with that. Also, what seemed to come up regularly in the comparison videos that I watched was the discussion of the dual action of the front end loader, namely being able to lift or drop and curl or uncurl at the same time. And not that some tractors can't do it, just apparently some of them, it's hard to find the sweet spot with the control stick to do that. And with this tractor, it's a piece of cake. The tractor doesn't come standard with a bucket level indicator, and when I bought it, I didn't even know what a bucket level indicator was, but I quickly realized that I needed one. So as soon as I realized such a thing existed, I grabbed a couple ideas from some YouTube videos and threw in a couple of my old tried and true tricks and built my own. And maybe after some more seat time I won't need it, but for now it sure comes in handy. I have a quick hitch and I love it, it works great, but then I ended up acquiring a couple implements that aren't quick hitch compatible, so with those I gotta hook them up the hard way, which actually isn't that hard. They're small, I can muscle them around if I have to get them lined up. However, the tractor came with these 2-piece pins on the stabilizer arms, and they're kind of a pain in the butt. That separate hitch pin on the bottom, it's hard to get out sometimes, and it's even more difficult to put back in. So I replaced those with these wire clip pins. They're a lot easier to use. Still talking about the 3-point, one thing I need to address is this stop knob here. And of course use that to limit the amount of down travel that your 3-point has. And I'll set this to set the height of my rotary cutter, for example. Maybe I set it at 5, I don't know. And then after a while, I'll notice that this has slipped. You know, maybe it's slipped down to 4 or even 3, and I got to reset it. And I can't get my fingers in here. It's a small knob, and I really can't get in here to torque this down tight enough so that it doesn't eventually start to slip. So I need to, like, underneath here where these rails are, maybe roughen that surface a little bit. It'd be nice if it was like knurled or something where it would have a little bit more bite. Or possibly something like this, you know, replace that knob with something like that. It's got a larger handle on it. This one won't work, it's too big, this end anyway, but something where I could get more torque on it, so that I could, you know, tighten this down a little bit better. Overall, I'm impressed with how much this 3-point can lift, and I guess being a first-time tractor owner, I didn't really know what to expect. But the rated capacity is right around 1,500 pounds, so even when I lift the front of the camper with a tongue weight of 700 pounds, you know, the tractor is just going, is that all you got? Like, it doesn't stress it whatsoever, so I haven't even gotten close to maxing out this 3-point yet. I started doing my regular maintenance on my tractor practically from day one, and one thing I noticed is how easy it is. At least so far, everything that I've needed to get to is quite accessible. The grease fittings, there's 3 on the main tractor, and an additional 10, I believe, if you've got a front end loader. Dipsticks and fill ports for both the front axle and also the main hydraulic system in the rear. Drain plugs, at least for the engine oil, and filters, for which there are 6. 1 engine oil, 2 hydraulic oil, fuel, and 2 air filters. I've worked on plenty of machinery where the general maintenance items were not exactly easy to get to, so this is nice. And I do realize that this is a tractor, not a sports car. However, that doesn't mean that all tractors were designed well as far as maintenance is concerned. The side panels for the engine compartment are removable, and they just pull right out real easy, and then they snap right back in, and they're toolless, which is nice too. The hood could be easier to open though. There's really no good place to grab onto it unless you reach all the way down at the very bottom to lift it up, so I'll probably end up replacing the hood ornament with like a drawer pull or a closet door knob. Onto the operator's manual. So this not only has all the instructions on how to operate the tractor, but also has the maintenance schedules in there, as well as the procedures for maintenance. I've watched plenty of videos on Kubota maintenance, and inevitably in the comments there's 1 or 2 people that state that the operator's manual is worthless and it's crap or whatever, but that's not the case. I am a technical writer by trade, like I have a degree in everything, it's fabulous. Anyway, I spent 10 years writing maintenance manuals for industrial machinery, and at the same time I had to reference a lot of really bad documentation on the same subject, so I know what bad documentation looks like, and this isn't it. That's not to say it's perfect. There is an area here and there that could use more clarification, or there might be something laid out differently than I would have done, but in my professional opinion, I think it's actually well done. My advice to anybody that does their own maintenance on their tractor, especially for a first-time tractor owner, would be to read through the manual first, and then after that, the internet's your best friend. For any test that you need to do, there's probably a video for it or multiple videos for it, and those can help with tips on saving time or money or alternate tools to use, and most importantly, probably help you to keep from making a mistake. It would be nice, though, if they included part numbers in the operator's manual, and that way I can just double check parts if I get them from the dealer to be sure they gave me the right one, or maybe sometimes I'm ordering online and it really helps to have a part number there too. I performed the 50-hour service, and all of the steps in the manual were easy to follow, but there was one procedure in there that was slightly ambiguous, and so I ended up having a slight issue. And had I watched a video on the 50-hour service prior to that, I probably would have been able to avoid that particular pitfall. So again, the internet is a really good secondary resource. And of course, now that I'm at 100 hours, I do need to perform the 100-hour service. I've read through all the procedures on that. Everything looks straightforward, so I'm confident that that's going to go well. There's some features that are nice to see. The cubby that I use to carry my cell phone, although I probably should carry it on my person instead. That way, if I were to fall off the tractor, I wouldn't have to crawl back to it to call for help. 12-volt auxiliary port is nice for charging, and also I have a handheld spotlight that would plug into here as well if I needed it. Having a cup holder is nice, but it's not exactly within easy reach. Then again, it is a tractor built for business, so placement of controls is primary, placement of beverages is secondary. The stock headlights probably work fine if you're mowing your lawn at night and if you don't have a bucket on front of your tractor. But other than that, working at night, you need more light, and so I added an LED light bar. But what's really nice is in the back under the fender are connections for an auxiliary work light. So I was able to plug my LED light bar directly into those connections instead of having to run wires all the way up to, say, the dashboard or splice into like the taillight wires or something like that. Throughout this video, I mentioned a few things that I would make modifications to or small updates to, and here's one more thing. The exhaust exits forward, and so I end up getting a bunch of soot buildup on the bucket. This is how it normally looks, but this is how I'd rather that it look. Pressure washer gets it off fine, but I think I'm going to go ahead and add some sort of a deflector to redirect the exhaust so I don't have that issue anymore. And like every other issue I have with the tractor, it's a small thing, it's not a deal breaker. I owned this tractor for about a year and a half before even reaching my first 50 hours. And I remember that distinctly because I performed the 50-hour service, and that was quite interesting. But within 6 months after that, I had put on another 50 hours, just simply because I was discovering more things that I could use it for or more things that it could do. So it's becoming increasingly valuable to me. And there's a few small things that I would change, but they're minor. But I would say that this is the best money I ever spent. I absolutely love it.